Hey, what's good, you guys? This is Eric with OzoneTCG. We have a very special guest. This is Lucas Windel. He got top 8 at the German Nationals. Lucas, what did you play? What did you do? And how was your experience with the tournament?
Okay, so I got top 8 at German Nationals with Swordsoul. The tournament was the first really big IRL tournament we had since COVID. We haven't had a YCS in Europe yet, so this was basically the closest we've got to a YCS since 2020. The tournament was actually huge for how it's normally going. We had 1,844 players. Usually German nationals average around 1,000 players, or at least that's how it's been over the last years. But for some reason people were really excited to go, so we had a big event.
That's awesome. Seriously, that's a huge accomplishment. That's bigger than, I think, every single YCS in the US we've had. Was there anything different that European events did compared to US events, like registration, anything like that?
I've only been to one American YCS, but even before Corona or before COVID, one difference is in America you could hand in, you could register on Friday and still hand in your deck list on Saturday, I believe. Or that's how it has been in the LA YCS I've been to.
Yeah, previously.
In Europe, when you register, you always have to directly hand in your deck list. You can't hand it in later. But this time it has been very different. For this national, you basically registered online. You bought a ticket for the normal entry fee, 20 euros. Then you put in your personal information, your COSI ID and everything. And then a few days before the event, the decklist submission opened, and you could submit your decklist via the Neuron app.
Oh wow!
So you basically didn't have to be at the venue before round 1 started. You didn't have to hand in anything. You didn't have to register again. Just turn up to round 1, sit down with your deck, and you play.
Seems like Konami's finally getting a clue from other games to register online. That's insane. Before we get into the profile, do you have any shoutouts you want to give?
Sure. Shoutouts to my team Baba Card Gaming. Huge fucking shoutouts to Henry Doppheide from Eman Games. I've been traveling with him to the event, and I basically didn't really play the game during COVID at all, so I had to get back into the game and had to learn how to play Swordsoul, and Swordsoul is actually a bit more difficult to learn because you have a lot of different paths you can take to play through disruptions and hand traps, so it's been a bit of a learning experience, and he helped me so much with learning everything, and I've been building the deck with him. He played the exact same list and came top 16. We actually played each other in top 16, and it was probably one of the most intense matches I ever had in a tournament before. So yeah, huge fucking shoutouts to him.
Perfect. Alrighty, we're gonna go ahead and go into the main deck then. Now, most of Swordsoul is solved, as most people who follow competitive know. Really, it comes down to some of the minute choices and tech choices. So we'll start with the Swordsoul cards. You have the 2 Taya, 3 Ecclesia, 3 Moye, and 3 Long Yuan, 3 Emergence, and the 1 Blackout. I think that's pretty standard, especially with Desires at 2 again. Don't really see a reason to play anything different. How did the 2 Taya turn out? Did you ever, I don't know, summon the second, or banish both, or banish just one?
I've actually sided the second one out a few times, especially in weird matchups where I didn't really think I needed it. It's really insane for making Baxia, because you basically get to free spin cards and send like Moye and then revive Moye with Baxia to make an actual other rank level 8 synchro. it came up that I banished one with Desires and didn't have the second one in the deck because I sided it out, but it didn't really ever matter. I would maybe after the event consider cutting it down to 1 because at some point I just drew 2 of it and it was really bad, but it was definitely alright to have 2.
Gotcha, yeah, that seems to be basically the only kind of point of contention for Swordsoul players. But with the Tenyis, you were playing the 2 Adhara, 3 Ashuna, 3 Vishuddha, and 1 Chthana, 2 Dragon Circle, Heavenly Dragon Circle, and 2 Vessel for the Dragon Cycle. How did you feel about these ratios?
We tested around with them a lot. We've tried 3 Vessel and no Circle. And we tried no Chthana and stuff, but we ended up deciding on these ratios because you don't really ever want to see more than 1 Vessel, and Vessel is kinda awkward going second in some matchups, so we actually sided them out going second a lot. And the thing with Circle is that sometimes it's really great if you get to dodge like Impermanence or Veiler, or even Droplet or something like that. But sometimes it doesn't really do anything. It's a bit like Talons. If your opponent has a hand trap and you have it to dodge it, it's really good. And if your opponent doesn't end up having any hand trap, it's just sitting around as a more or less dead card. But this weekend the card was really good. I liked it.
Would you consider bumping Heavenly Dragon Circle to 3? And did you ever play around Mystic Mine with it?
Yeah, that was also an argument to play it because it's a Mystic Mine out. It's not the best Mystic Mine out because your opponent can usually tell when you set it up because you link everything away for 1 monster and then set a card. You can technically bait your opponent into thinking that you have it by just setting a bluff and linking everything away, but that only works against somewhat competent players. Because sometimes people just don't realize it's an out and then don't play into it, and that's awkward. But it didn't come up this weekend, but yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
In theory it does.
Awesome. Now, would you consider ever changing your Tenyi ratios, any of the Tenyi cards whatsoever, or were you comfortable with them?
I think for now I'm going to stick with it.
Okay.
Like the 1 Chthana also sometimes stayed in the main deck even when I sided out Circle. Because if you open Longyan and Ashuna as your only play, then you can still end up on 2 Synchro Monsters because of it. Like you can summon Chthana with Ashuna from the deck and turn the token and Chthana into Chisao, banish the Blackout, make a token, and then turn Longyan and the token into one of the 2 level 10s that are not Baroness.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome. Alrighty. And then for the generic cards, we'll go with the hand traps, triple Ash Blossom, triple Impermanence, the 1 Veiler, and the triple Droplets, 1 Called By. How did Droplets perform, and how was the 1 Veiler? Okay,
so the Droplets were actually really insane. We had a lot of Punk decks at German Nationals. So this card was insane to not get Calamitied in your main phase. And overall it was a really good decision to play it. It's also a token collector out post-siding, so even going first I kept it in a lot, because, even though they are technically better cards. Yeah, like I would definitely keep on maining these. They've been really good.
Okay, awesome. And did Veiler come up for you often? Did you draw it often? Was it good when you did draw it, if you drew it all?
I don't really remember. I definitely drew it a few times, and it's still a solid hand trap. It's a bit worse than Impermanence because Impermanence can out a negation on your own turn if you draw it for turn, or if you hold it, obviously, and it doesn't play into Talons or Called by the Grave. But the main reason why the 1 Veiler's in the main deck, because you can if it comes up, search it with Chaofeng. Like if you go Chaofeng to play around Nibiru or something, and you either hard draw the trap or search the trap, you can pop Chaofeng with the trap and then search a tuner. So you can either search Ash Blossom or Vela or Atara. But yeah.
Okay, perfect. And would you change anything in the main deck moving forward? Say you're playing at European Internationals. Would you change the main deck, or do you think this was a really good choice for the event and moving forward?
Depending on how the popularity of the Punk combo deck goes, I would maybe consider playing more hand traps. I lost a lot of die rolls to combo last weekend, so I kinda missed hand traps a lot. Like a lot of times I just didn't open any hand traps against combo, and that lost me a few games or made games really, really awkward. And maybe consider running Droll Lockbirds or Nibirus or something. But not really sure about that one yet or what to cut for it.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome. Alrighty, let's move on to the extra deck. This is relatively standard. Again, most of the ratios are figured out. But the few things I want to touch upon, the 2 Basha and the 1 Draco Masters of the Tenyi, how did those perform?
Okay, I made Baxia a lot this weekend just to outboards to get rid of token collectors for good. I would definitely not cut down to 1. In some matches I would have even summoned 3 if I could. The card is really, really insane. And the Draco Master, I was like, Henry was pretty set on this card. For a long time I was trying to find a better option than this because I didn't like it too much, but after this weekend I'm not going to cut this card. This card is really, really insane sometimes. It lets you somewhat play under barrier if you get barriered. Like even then it's a bit awkward because you can't really set up anything and you're reliant on your opponent not having the most amazing follow-up. But it won me my top 64 match against Drytron because he played the Amorphage Link monster that skips your main phase 1 and negates all Synchro Fusion and XYZ monsters on the field. So this was basically my only out besides Droplet Impermanence and Circle. Yeah, Vishuda wasn't an out against him because he searched Lancea during his combo, so yeah, the Tenris didn't really do anything. But I could end up making this to out his monster, then set up negations and win. So yeah, and also against Henry in top 16, it won me also game 2 because I basically only drew Tenjis and not a single Swordsoul card, and without it I wouldn't have had a way to out his board and out his follow-up.
Okay, awesome. That's awesome. We've been back and forth on this card in our own team chats with OzoneTCG, talking about lineup, but honestly, I love the Tenyi cards. I think this is a really good choice. So your reasoning is definitely really nice. It makes sense for especially the larger.
Like the other options I was considering was like Dragite for Branded to actually have another hard negation for Branded Fusion, but it never really came up, and I played it like for one regional or like another event past that, and it wasn't never good, so I decided against that. Then like Lanfolinkus was an option, just a vanilla Link 2 to like link away dead synchro monsters to do Tenji stuff, but that also didn't really come up, or like very rarely. What you could also play is what you mentioned, Liner. I would have probably played Liner if I ended up playing Nibiru's, but I didn't really feel like playing Nibiru's because it blocks your Tenjis a lot. But I could see that being a good option. Okay,
awesome. Perfect extra. I really like this extra. I love 2 Basha, one of my favorite cards ever. Let's move on to the side deck then. Really interesting tech choices. And usually when I say interesting means bad, but I think these are really nice choices. How did the one Gadala play? I assume this was for Fluwandereeze. Did you ever summon it?
Okay, the Gadala is actually a funny story. On Friday, like we were pretty set on every card in our side deck besides Gadala. So we were looking for some one-off we could play that's not totally bad. We were considering either Change of Heart or one Trap Trick to basically have a fourth barrier. Trap Trick would have probably been the worst decision we could have made because barrier wasn't even that great. Change of Heart was a bit of in contention because it's kind of it's kind of really powerful. It basically baits a negation, or you could steal really important stuff and maybe kill with it. But in the end, we decided to play one random kaiju because in Germany we have some really degenerate people that play stuff like Crooked Cook with sharks. So it's basically an unaffected monster that can't be destroyed by battle, so you can't out it besides a kaiju. And we also have a few at Ignister players and stuff, so we were like, yeah, okay, let's just play one kaiju in case we play against something like that, so we actually have an out.
Okay, awesome. I'm glad that it was there at least. The interesting card that I think not a lot of people are playing in general, at least this format, is Ghost Mourner. How did this card play for the tournament?
Okay, so the reasoning behind Mourner is it's not the greatest hand trap because it doesn't work on normal summons, obviously. But we definitely wanted to play more token collector outs, and this card is just the perfect token collector out and hand trap. Like, you can side it going second against combo and it's kind of alright, and when we went first after siding, we almost always sided this in just because it outs Token Collector. Token Collector is such a blowout card, and we didn't really want to lose to it so much. So it was an auto-include. It actually never came up for me that I drew it when my opponent had Token Collector, but it was really nice to have the option for it.
Okay, awesome. Would you consider in the future playing something like Forbidden Chalice as a token collector out, or do you just like Mourner more?
I don't really see the benefit in Forbidden Chalice over it, to be honest. Like, Chalice isn't even a hand trap. It's just better against normal summons from your opponent when you go first, and I don't really see the benefit, yeah. Also, this card won my friend Henry his top 64 match because of the burn damage.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, like awesome. he played against Despia, and they were close to time, and the Despia player opened Giga Nuts and ended on like double Masquerade, Mirror Jade, and at some point he Mournered an Albion, and then he fused the Albion away and took the damage, and the opponent didn't even know that Mourner had this burn effect, so he wasn't aware that he was going to take 2,500 damage for fusing his monster away. And then Henry ended up winning in time because of damage.
Oh wow, that's awesome already. And then next card is Harpy's Feather Duster and Lightning Storm, kind of similar cards. Did you play against a lot of backrow decks?
Like, because it's a national event, we expected a lot more backrow decks than usual, like Eldritch or Dinomorphia or something like that. Actually didn't play a single real backrow only deck. I played like 3 Fluwandereeze though, and Lightning Storm was insane against Fluwandereeze here. Every time I drew it, it was such a blowout. In my top 32 match against Fluwandereeze, I even opened 3 Lightning Storms game 2, and having 2 Lightning Storms for 2 following turns won me that game.
Okay, awesome. I assume you would keep this card in Harpies in moving forward for any other events?
Not so sure about 3 Lightning Storm actually. Depending, like for Euros, people will probably play more combo and less backrow decks, so Lightning Storm might be worse. but we gotta see how the format is evolving over the next month or so. Like maybe it would actually be a play to play more kaijus. Yeah, actually been great.
Alrighty, yeah, fair enough.
Though I would probably not play Gardala anymore. I would consider playing Humongous instead.
Okay.
Like we sided the kaiju against Rwandaries for the statue. But what ended up mattering more is the level of the kaiju. I drew it against Pantherian, and because it was level 8, my opponent could make Baroness with it, which was a bit awkward. If it was level 7, he couldn't really do anything with it, but yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Awesome. Alrighty, and then the one, I'm going to go over here, one red reboot, again, probably for back row decks.
Yeah, and actually we sided it going second a lot, even versus non-back row decks like Swordsoul, Despia, even some adventure decks, just to not lose to barrier.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Alrighty.
And yeah, it won me my top 16 match against Henry. I wouldn't have won if I didn't open Red Reboot Game 3. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Speaking of Dimension Barrier, how did Dimensional Barrier work for you? You said it wasn't too great. Would you consider continue playing it, or do you think Anti-Spell is just better?
It actually has been a bit awkward because it's not really good against a lot of the combo decks, because even if you barrier them, you get like you get like Boral Sorted or Access Coded, and against Drytron you just get Zeused. So against like these decks it's kind of awkward. Against Despia and Swordsoul you obviously have to play it. But even against those, it's sometimes a bit awkward, because sometimes like when I win game 2, I'm conflicted about siding these, because sometimes your opponent just randomly makes you go first in these matchups if they side weirdly for it. Sometimes they go first and then your barriers are kind of awkward, but yeah. In the mirror match though, we ended up still siding barriers going second in case you either break their board or open enough hand traps, or their hand is not good enough to put up a board through your hand traps. So you can't really not play it because it's such a blowout against Despia and Swordsoul. But yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Now, how did Anti-Spell perform? Did you like the card? Do you think it's awkward as well?
Well, this event, it was really, really insane. Like, it could have probably been a bit more insane for me if my opponents didn't always open Droplet when I had Fragrance. But even if they did, I likely still, pretty much always still won the game, because Droplet loses a lot of value if you can't go like activate Desire's Chain Droplet to get a free negation or something like that. So yeah, going forward I would still play it. I sided it going first against every combo deck, because every combo deck plays like either the adventure stuff or like the Etherean stuff, and or go second cards that are spells. So yeah, I would keep playing Fragrance. It's really nice.
Did you ever side it in versus Swordsoul going first, or do you think just Barrier was enough?
I was considering it, but since we also started siding out Vessel going second, I didn't feel like there were enough power spells in Swordsoul that would justify siding Fragrance. So we basically just sided barriers going first.
Okay, gotcha, awesome. I really like this list. Seemed to do really well for the event. What were your matchups, if you recall, throughout the entire event through Swiss and TopCon?
Should have probably thought about that first before we started, but round 1 I played a mirror match where I won round 2, I lost against Virtual World Adventure. Round 3, I won against Dragon Link because of the Kaiju. Because Boral End is really not outable unless unless you open Droplet. That card is actual hell.
Yeah.
Round 4, I lost